Welcome to another 7-minute Disney tips video. Today we're going to talk about the best time of the year to visit. And I try to keep these videos under 7 minutes, and this one is going to be a challenge to do that. So I'm going to jump right in, and apologies if I go too fast. So the best is subjective, right? What are you looking for? Typically there's three things that people focus on when thinking about the best time of year. And that is going to be your work/school schedule, one or both, having a big impact. And then crowds is probably the biggest, and then weather is another factor. Now, of course, you can't control those latter two. You can't really control crowds. You can pick better times of years than others, and the weather, again, you should have a pretty good idea. But where is the weather really all that predictable, especially as we've talked about in some other videos, months in advance as you're planning your trips. So none of this is going to be set in stone. None of this is going to be perfect, and certainly none of it is guaranteed. But these are the things to think about. So I'll start with crowds, because for me that's the biggest thing. That's the one element that I think you can should probably work to plan accordingly, right? So, first of all, Disney World is always crowded. Okay, when we talk about crowds, what we really mean is wait times, right? Are there times of year where the lines for the rides and attractions are going to be shorter, more consistently than other times of the year? And yes, is absolutely the question. Crowded is again a relative term. What feels crowded to somebody who's from New York and rides the subway every day may be very different from somebody who lives in the suburbs in the Midwest. That is what crowded means to them. But there will be times when you will be walking through crowds at the Magic Kingdom, shuffling your feet because you're shoulder to shoulder with people. And that can happen almost any time of the year. Certainly it's more common at others, other times of the years than some. So crowded is a little bit different than wait times. So when are the best times to go for crowd levels? So let's start with the times to avoid if crowds are your primary concern. The worst crowds of the year, generally speaking, are between Christmas and New Year's. Absolutely packed. The park will often reach capacity, so that no additional guests will be admitted. There's 4 levels. We won't get into all of those. There's different levels of closures. But that commonly happens that week between Christmas and New Year's. Everybody is off school. Lots of people have a week of vacation built in, so they're not really using vacation time to take that week off. And we'll talk about Disney at Christmas time in other videos. It is gorgeous. It is fun to be there, but you are going to have huge crowds. It's not to say you can't go and still accomplish a lot and have a really good time. There's a lot of people that go every year and they love it. But if crowds are a primary concern, it is going to be extremely crowded then. Spring break, it varies for people around the country, but starting in mid-March through mid-April, someone's on spring break. Early April, especially when it combines with Easter, for the East Coast, that's typically when their spring break falls. That gets very, very busy. So think about avoiding that week. July is pretty crowded. It's everybody's on vacation, right? We'll talk a little bit about fringe seasons depending on what part of the country you're in. Some schools get off earlier than others, and if you go right as you get off of school, you can sometimes beat the crowds, and then vice versa. If you go back later, everybody else has already gone back, you can sneak in a last-minute trip there at the summer. July, that doesn't apply. Thanksgiving is very big. It's a 4-day weekend. A lot of folks, easy to take a few days off ahead of that. Schools will tend to do that, so Thanksgiving week is very busy as well. Most holiday weekends are going to see an increase in crowds. Labor Day, Memorial Day, probably the least of those, but even on President's Day is going to bring some crowds out. So to think about that. So when are the lowest crowds? The lowest crowds, and again, relative wait times, lowest wait times I should probably say, is going to be mid to late September. That's period with a bullet. That's the one time that really does have, relatively speaking, low crowds. Not as low as they used to be, as Disney is a master at staying popular and staying relevant and bringing in crowds. They do a great job of it. Other times, early December, early January are good times as well. Typically right after super busy seasons will tend to make sense. The simplest rule of thumb is if the kids are in school, it's less crowded. If the kids are out of school, it's more crowded, right? That's the simplest way to think about crowds. Oversimplifying it a little bit, but at the same time, if you want to think about it in simple terms, that's it. There they are, right? Makes sense. And then I mentioned the fringe times of the year. So for us in the Midwest, our kids get out of school before Memorial Day, usually the week before Memorial Day. And so we have taken vacations literally their last day of school was a half day. We had an afternoon flight and got out of there, and it got more and more crowded every day, right? But it was still manageable. And so we then got out of there before Memorial Day and got 7 days in relatively low crowds, but still in summertime. And then the reverse is true, right? Some schools go back later, so our kids go back mid-August-ish. Some kids don't go back till after Labor Day. So those last 2 weeks in August can be the fringe on the other side where you might be able to take advantage of that. So that's going to bring us to the other thing to think about, and that is weather. And the weather, I'm not a meteorologist, and predicting weather is very, very difficult many months in advance. Everybody thinks, hey, Florida, the sunshine shade, it's warm. Okay, the summer is very hot. It is hot, it is muggy, it will rain almost every single day. What you hope for is it's a passing storm, it blows through, it goes away, you get a little bit wet, and you go on with your lives. Prolonged storms can shut rides down, torrential rain can flood things, and can make it miserable. We prefer to power through it, throw on a poncho, or don't. Just suck it up and know you're going to dry, right? You will dry. But it's going to rain every day in the summer. It just is. It's the afternoon storm. If it doesn't, count yourself lucky. And the problem is you think, oh, good, it's going to rain. It'll cool things off. No, it just bakes the humidity out. So the weather in the summer in Florida is not good. You will be hot. You will need to stay hydrated. We've got other videos on those. But, yeah, summer's hot, and it's not much fun there. So springtime. Springtime can be hit and miss, right? I mean, as with anywhere, it's a transitional season. You're going to get some storms. You could get some pretty good storms. You can get some pretty good rain. But if you don't, if you can time it right, the temperatures are going to be pretty nice in Florida, right? You're coming out of winter most likely. They're coming out of winter as well, but their winter's nothing compared to what we're used to northeast, up north, and even in the Midwest. So spring isn't a bad time weather-wise. I think fall is probably my favorite. Fall is the best. The problem with fall is they have a lot of late summer. So what is fall to us may be a little bit later for them. So you need to get pushed into later seasons. That can also get Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party involved, and actually they started super early. You might be even talking about some early Christmas stuff if you're talking about fall is October and November. The problem is the problem with fall is it's hurricane season still, so you could be facing that. Typically, the worst of the hurricanes is going to be in September. Another reason that's a pretty good time to go is people think about that and want to try to avoid it. You can still see those into fall. And so it's something to think about. And then that obviously leaves winter. But you can get fooled by winter, right? Going to Florida, it's sunny Florida. Well, it can still get kind of chilly. I mean, you can have highs in the 60s and lows that'll get you down in the 50s even, and extremes at times as well. You can see 30s. And if you're not ready for that, it's going to feel cold. And if you think you're going to sunny Florida where it's going to be shorts and t-shirt weather every day, it's not going to be in the winter, right? So you just have to plan for that and be aware of that. It's obviously going to be better than where most of us are from, so it's still nice, but just be aware that it's not perfect in any season, and certainly not in winter. So I've gone well over 7 minutes as I predicted I would do and still felt like I talked really fast. So if you have any questions, want more information, contact me either through the comments, check out the website, and I'm happy to talk more about it. But if I wanted to keep this video under 7 minutes, I probably could have kept it under 7 seconds by simply saying kids are in school, crowds are lower. Kids are out of school, crowds are higher. It's kind of that simple, but it's definitely something you want to think about when you're planning. And remember, when you do it well, planning is part of the fun. Thanks for watching.